Hey guys, I'm Ashley. Thank you for clicking on this video and hopefully you enjoy. I apologize in advance for my cat. She's a little crazy and she likes to be very vocal, so you may hear her, you may not. She may just leave us alone. Who knows? But just in case, I'm gonna throw it out there. I'm sorry. So yeah, if you haven't already read the title of this video, I will be discussing my 5 favorite books. And these are kind of comfort books to me. That's what I like to call them. They're books that I can go back and read and not really have to worry about, like, I don't want to say it's stressful or anything, but like it doesn't have the same feel as like a brand new book. You know what I mean? It's something that you've read before. It's something that you know that you're gonna enjoy, you know kind of what happens, so you're just kind of like, okay, just kind of floating along, going with the words, going with the flow, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, these are my 5 comfort books, and I'll kind of, like, I'm gonna try to avoid really telling you too much about them just because I don't want to spoil anything, but I do highly recommend these. And so yeah, the first one I will start off with is going to be not a shock at all to you guys. I will be actually very surprised if you haven't heard of it. It has a little bit of a reputation, and I will go ahead and throw out there, like, if you don't like it, if you have never liked the series, if you hate it, if you despise it, or if you love it, like, I respect your choice, decision. Totally understand. You're cool. It's all good. This book is just really important to me, just because it's one of the first books that I really remember just like sinking into, and really just sort of turned me into an avid reader, as weird as that sounds, and as much as I hate to say it. But so yeah, I got this book, well, I don't want to say it turned me into an avid reader, now that I think about it, because I was reading long before then. I was reading, like, Percy Jackson and stuff. It was just one of the first books that really turned me into a young adult reader. Well, Percy Jackson's young adult. What am I thinking? Sorry, words are not working with me right now. It's late, and I'm just sort of, it's like the first female main character, like, point of view book that I remember reading and, like, genuinely enjoying. Like, everything before that was always like Percy Jackson or Harry Potter, that kind of stuff, and or like fan fiction, which was on like a whole different level. But so yeah, this book I started reading in 6th grade. I distinctly remember how I started reading it, just because it was one of those books that had been out for a while. It had been kind of popular, like, it hadn't really hit its peak yet, and when I was in 6th grade, but it was definitely like on the rise, climbing there. Actually, when I started reading the series, it was like maybe a month or 2 after the 4th book came out, so lucky for me, I didn't have to wait too long to catch up and read everything. But so yeah, basically what happened was my mom's best friend pulled her aside and was like, hey, like, Linda, Ashley needs to read this book. It's great, and it's about vampires, it's kind of romancy, it's really cool. I think she'll seriously enjoy it. And so she gave my mom a copy, and I read about 2 pages and was like, yeah, no, not my style, not for me, and set it down and didn't touch it for like a while, I think a month or 2, and I don't really remember what inspired me to actually like pick it up again. I think either my mom like mentioned something, or I think maybe even the 4th book came out, like, or something, like, I don't know what happened, but basically I picked it up again and I started reading it, and I couldn't put it down for 2 solid days. I did nothing. It was in the middle of summer, thank God. So I had no classes, and I literally, it took me 2 days. I read through the entire book. And so yeah, if you haven't guessed what it is yet, it's Twilight. As you can see, my copy, it has some wear and tear. I have destroyed it. Again, I got this in 6th grade. There's actually tape on the spine because it like is falling apart. But so yeah, and again, I totally like reading back on it now. It's one of those things where I still enjoy it more for nostalgic feelings, and I do appreciate just the story in general, but I do understand from both sides kind of why it's not universally liked. But so yeah, it's definitely one of my comfort reads. It's one of the milestone books, I feel like, in my life. It's one of the main ones that really like I'm who I am as an author today because of it, and who I am as a reader today because of it. But yeah, I genuinely love it. And if you don't know anything about Twilight, if you have never heard of it, then I mean, good for you. I definitely recommend it. It's a good read, even if it's just to see like what all the hype is about. But so yeah, that's my first book. The second one is kind of a Mulan retelling, kind of. It's actually, hold it up. It's called Aeon by Alison Goodman. It is one of my favorites. Obviously, it's in this video. But this is one that I have read through so many times. Like, it's not quite Twilight level, but you can kind of see it's getting there. It's definitely getting there. I don't think I've had it as long though, so it's definitely not Twilight level. But this one I really, really love just because it's, like I said before, it's kind of a Mulan retelling where basically the main character is posing as a male, and it also takes place like in Asian society, or fantasy Asian themed society, and but it's so just badass, so cool. It has a lot more magical elements. She doesn't get like a funny dragon sidekick. Instead, she like gets some really cool badass dragon sidekicks. Only they're not really sidekicks. But I don't want to explain too much just because I don't want to actually like ruin it for you or spoil anything. But I will read the back for you guys, just so that way you kind of know a little bit about what it is. And basically, for years, Aeon's life has been focused on magical study and sword work, with one goal: that he be chosen as a Dragoneye, an apprentice to one of the 12 energy dragons of good fortune. But Aeon has a dangerous secret. He is actually Iona, a 16-year-old girl who has been masquerading as a 12-year-old boy. Females are forbidden to use dragon magic. The penalty is death. When Iona's secret threatens to come to light, she and her allies are plunged into grave danger in a struggle for the imperial throne. Iona must find the strength and her inner power to battle those who want to take her magic and her life. It's really cool. I totally recommend you read this if you haven't read it already. I love this book. So yeah, that is this number 2. Number 3 is another vampire book. You may have heard of it, you may not have heard of it. It definitely was not on the same scale as Twilight, I don't think. But it's by one of my favorite authors, Christopher Pike, and it is Thirst. And unlike Twilight, it kind of goes, I'm not saying the opposite direction, but instead of, the love interest being this super sexy vampire, the main character is. And she's a 5,000-year-old vampire who kind of kicks butts and takes names along the way, And basically what happens is she has a weird relationship with the vampire that created her, that turned her into a vampire, and he decides to come hunt her down for revenge. And so she basically goes through the book trying to escape him, trying to prevent him from finding her, which same thing. words, trying to defeat him, fight him, kill him, get rid of him, all of the above. And it's really, really cool, very badass. Basically, I don't want to get into too much, but I highly recommend you read it if you haven't already, and if you really enjoy vampires, it is really, really good. And so yeah, I actually remember in high school, I tried to force my boyfriend at the time to read it. I fought really hard. I was like, hey, this is my absolute favorite book. You need to read it. And I will never forget, I forced him to hold on to it while I had to take a test. After school, I had to retake a test or something. And so he sat outside, and with nothing better to do than to read a book. And so he read like the first chapter or so, and he was like, oh, okay, it's kind of interesting. And then, he never touched it again. And then we broke up, so it is what it is. But he seemed to enjoy it for the most part. And so I feel like if someone who doesn't really read or never really liked to read and they enjoyed it, I feel like people who do read will enjoy it too. So yeah, that is number 3. Number 4 it's actually a newer book, and it's already falling apart too. I promise I treat my books better than this, I swear. But it's actually a newer book, and it's something that really caught my eye because, as you may have noticed, especially from if you watched the last video, and if you watched my little origin story on how I started writing, I love ancient Egypt. Anything and all thing that is ancient Egyptian, I love it. I want to read it. I have textbooks on it. I literally own textbooks about ancient Egypt because I love it so much. And this book is based on ancient Egypt, so it definitely caught my eye, and it had sort of a modern twist to it as well, which I really enjoyed. And in reading it, it was very nice. I will say that, at least from what I remember reading and everything, the main character kind of has a little bit of Mary Sue tendencies. And those of you who don't know what a Mary Sue is, it's basically the main character who has a super sad backstory and parents who are just not in the picture, and they have literally no weaknesses whatsoever, and they're usually kind of overflowing with all sorts of different sorts of powers. And they're not usually super fun. And I will say she does have some weaknesses. They do explore that, which is great. But especially in the beginning, her parents are out of the picture, they're super rich, whatever, so she can just afford to drop money on a dime, and it's come pay for my student debt because I need your money. But she basically, what happens is, or let me hold up the book so you can actually see. It's called Reawakened. It's so interesting, but basically she lives in this day and age, and she loves going to this museum, and the museum happens to have a Egyptian setup / room, whatever, and basically she runs into a real life pharaoh, and it's so beautifully written because it literally I keep saying literally, it's basically how I would have imagined someone from ancient Egypt, thousands of years ago, coming into modern day New York City. And it's so funny to me. It's such an interesting read. It is so good. I highly recommend it if you haven't already read it. If you have, then good for you. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, that's okay too. I would read the background, but it doesn't really have a synopsis for you. It doesn't really have a synopsis, and neither does the front, so yeah. But basically, what it does say on the back is, A modern girl, an ancient price, a centuries-old curse, and an epic journey with more twists and turns than the Nile itself. So yeah, that kind of gives you some vibes as to what it's about. But it's definitely super interesting. Highly recommend it. So yeah, that leaves us with our last and final book. This book is, I saved the best for last. It is my absolute all-time favorite book, like, just in history. I actually, a lot of you might, if you guys watch like anime and stuff, some of you might actually have already heard of it or heard about it. And a lot of you may have already seen the actual movie that was inspired by it. But this book, it holds such a special place in my heart. Like, it is the, like, epitome of my comfort book. Like, every time I usually go back to this one, and it's just something that I never really thought I would like. And I remember when I first started reading it, this is actually when I was living in Virginia, so about a year before I came here. It's about 5 years or so now. I rented it from the local library because I watched the movie and I was like, ooh, I love this movie. And I learned that it was inspired by a book. So I was like, perfect, let me go read this book. And I didn't want to buy it, so I went to the library and I rented it. And it's the same thing with Twilight, I could not get through the first few pages. And part of it's because the way that it's written, first of all, it's kind of an older book. I think, actually, when was this released? Okay. The text copyright was released in 1986. So yeah. And the book is like fiction, like it kind of has a weird, you can kind of see it already. Okay. This is the book. Howl's Moving Castle. It is my favorite thing in existence that has ever been written before, and you cannot convince me otherwise. I love it so much. Anyways, back to what I was saying. It's a little bit of an older book, so the actual like way that it's written and the diction is a little bit hard to get into at first. So like I said, it took me a bit to actually like get into it and read it. But once I did, I loved it, and it is still to this day one of my favorites. It's slowly kind of fallen apart on the edges because I read it so much. But I actually, like, the moment I finished the rented version, like, I rushed out and I bought my own version because I love it. And actually, I love it so much. The main character, her name is Sophie. I named my cat after her, and the main character of my series Obscure, I named her after this character. Like, I love this so much. It is so great. For those of you who have no idea what this is or what it's about, it's basically, I'll read the back to you. It goes, Sophie has the great misfortune of being the eldest of 3 daughters, destined to fail miserably should she ever leave home to seek her fate. But when she unwittingly attracts the ear of the Witch of the Waste, Sophie finds herself under a horrid spell that transforms her into an old lady. Her only chance at breaking it lies with the ever-moving castle in the hills, the wizard Howl's castle. To untangle the enchantment, Sophie must handle the heartless Howl, strike a bargain with the fire demon, and meet the Witch of the Waste head-on. Along the way, she discovers there's far more to Howl and herself than first meets the eye. It's such a good book, and I really have to say, like, I love the movie, do not get me wrong. I totally love it. It's one of those movies that's one of my comfort movies. I literally have it playing 24/7. But it honestly does not do this book justice. So I highly recommend it. If you love the movie, please read the book. It is so good. It goes so much more in depth into their world, into like what like all books do, in comparison to their movie counterparts. But there's so many like little twists and turns that like you don't get from the movie. Obviously, like with any book to movie comparison. But there's a lot of like little things that they just don't even touch, or they changed, and you're totally missing out on one of the best stories of your life. And this is by far one of my favorite books ever. I highly recommend you check it out. Like, highly, highly, highly. I cannot stress that enough. Like, this is... I love this book so much. But so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, then please click the little like button and maybe subscribe. If you don't like it, then, you know, let me know so I can kind of steer clear of doing this again. Not really. I'm gonna kind of do what I want, but yeah. So yeah, again, this channel is not gonna always be book and writing related, just throwing that out there now. I know that right now it seems that, but it's mainly just because my laptop is dying and I don't have the money to buy a new one right now, and so all we can really do is like head on like conversations like this. But I do eventually want to get to some game playthroughs, and I have a lot of ideas for when my sister comes up in the summer, so that'll be fun. Hopefully you enjoy that, and hopefully the audio will be better this time. And I'm still working on timing and everything, but so yeah, thank you for sticking with me and bearing through this. I know it may not be the best quality video out there, but yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you come back next time. Thank you. Bye.